Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Chet Babla, and I'm the Vice President of Automotive at Arm. I'm really excited today to be joined by Alex Hitzinger, CEO of Artemiss and Senior Vice President of Autonomous Driving at Volkswagen. Alex, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we kick off our virtual fireside chat, I wanted to remind the audience about the incredible career that you've had to date already. Your career started in rally motorsport and includes technical roles at Toyota and Cosworth. You then moved to Formula One, working with Red Bull as head of advanced technologies, and also Scuderia Toro Rosso, where you were technical director. You then moved to Porsche to become technical director of their Le Mans LMP1 race car program. And I've also worked in Silicon Valley at Apple. And here you are now, CEO of Volkswagen subsidiary Artemiss and SVP of Autonomous Driving at Volkswagen. Wow, what a journey you've had, and you're still in the prime of your career. And there's something really special about the location that you join us from now, Alex. Can you tell us about that?
Hi, Chet. Nice to be with you today. We are here right now in the compute center of the IN campus near Ingolstadt. That's basically where the on-premise cloud compute will be for this area here.
So to kick things off, I wondered, how does someone who spent a career as technical lead at racing teams end up working for a mainstream automotive giant like Volkswagen?
It's actually not that different, what I'm doing now compared to what I did in the past. So I worked a long time in motorsport, and I wanted at some point to do something different. Something which touches more lives, has more of an impact on society. And that's why I left motorsport after a very, very successful project with Porsche and went to Apple into the tech industry. And that's where I basically sort of came into touch with autonomy and making the next step and combining autonomy and electric vehicles with a big OEM, the biggest OEM in the world, VW. That was very tempting, and that's how I ended up working at VW again.
Probably it'd be great if you could tell us a little bit about Artemiss, its goals, why Volkswagen set up this program.
We sat down as a management group and we discussed, we looked for a strategy. How can we accelerate the transformation of the Volkswagen Group towards a tech company? And how do we get faster in executing development projects? Volkswagen is extremely good in scaling up, in sort of developing or manufacturing vehicles at a very high quality, at a very large scale. But we thought, we want to become faster. We want to add expertise in the area of software and robotics, push features like autonomy forward.
And you mentioned electrification as well. Volkswagen has set out some really ambitious goals around electrifying vehicle platforms, shipping a target of up to 20 million vehicles over the next decade. From your point of view, how pervasive do you think electrification could become? And from a consumer point of view, what are the real drivers? Why should consumers care about electrification?
I think electrification is really a done deal. Let's put it that way, right? I think there's no question about anymore that electrification in the automotive space will take off, and it's already taking off on it, and that will just accelerate. Just from a carbon footprint point of view, there's just no other way. So there's the discussion about what is the future of powertrains, and we talk about different energy storage systems. In my opinion, that's maybe still a question, right? But even a fuel cell car is an electric car, right? It has an electric powertrain. Just the energy source is different. So for me, electrification, tick the box, done deal, and it's just a question of how quickly is it going to ramp up, because the automotive industry is a massively big industry. It has a very high latency, so it's moving slowly, let's put it that way, because the fleet is so large. But it's going to happen. So what is driving the customers to electrification? I mean, it's very it's very convenient. The cars are really fun to drive. People are more and more environmentally aware. People want to use sustainable technology, and electrification now shows that way and enables them to do that.
And you mentioned electrification in all of its forms is kind of a done deal, tick box. From your point of view, what kind of new R&D and innovation is going to be required to really make this a done deal?
Efficiency is the name of the game, right? So the cars need to get more and more efficient, and we need to further either increase the range or reduce the battery size in order, reducing the battery size in order to bring the overall cost down. So one big field of R&D is obviously battery and cell chemistry, and VW is doing a lot of research in this area, and we have made a lot of progress with partners. And QuantumScape, for example, is one of our partners on the battery side.
One of the things we hear a lot about is the software-defined vehicle. And Volkswagen has even set up a dedicated division called car.software.org. And that's going to help you embrace this future vision of software-defined vehicle. Can you tell us a bit more about how and why software is so critical to Volkswagen, and in particular for the Artemis program as well?
The cars are changing quite a lot in terms of the individual technologies which define features, right? Nowadays, almost every feature in a car involves software, and we want to have the ability to continuously improve features in the car and add new features. And that basically means that we have to be able to update the software in the car on a very regular basis, and not just when we sell the car.
And then obviously there's a hardware and software challenge. How do you see that playing out for Artemis?
Yeah, the interesting thing is what I just explained is that this very short development cycle on software updates, this development cycle is longer for hardware. So ideally, you decouple hardware and software, and so you abstract the two, and that is obviously a hard requirement in terms of the development of the software stack and also the optimization of hardware and software together.
And we can't have any discussion today around autonomous driving and automated driving without talking about AI and machine learning. How do you see those technologies working into your strategy for future vehicles?
They are an essential ingredient, being it for intelligent assistance or being it for parts of the robotic stack for perception and so on. There, AI and machine learning are fundamental to it. So future cars and the software stacks in future cars will require this technology, and it's obviously still a quite new technology, and it's evolving very fast, and AI and machine learning evolves together with the hardware performance. So we have to become, or we have to be experts in this field.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point, right? As these technologies and their requirements are evolving, Volkswagen will also have to develop new competencies, new capabilities. Is that a challenge that you're rising to?
Absolutely. I mean, that's why Volkswagen has founded the car software org, but also that's a reason why we create this Artemis project, which should be an accelerator to develop these kind of technologies.
And as well as Volkswagen and the Artemis team developing these new competencies, what role do you see third-party developers have, and how can they contribute to the Artemis program?
Third-party developers always play an important role because you cannot do everything by yourself because you have limited capacity. It also doesn't make sense to do everything by yourself.
There's been a lot of coverage in the media and everyone's excited about autonomous. Do you think it's really going to happen?
Just think of, you're driving somewhere where there are no lane markings. You have hailstorm or whatever. There can always be situations which are extremely difficult to handle, and that definition is a limitation, which a system might have, right? And that's the difference between level 5 and level 4. When we go to level 4 and we say, okay, within an operational design domain, so a limited functionality. Now, within that limited operational design domain, the vehicle is fully robotic. So level 4 autonomy, that will happen for sure. And it will happen in stages. So you start with a small ODD, and you expand it. And expanding means more geographies, more complex driving situations. You will start maybe on the highway and then go step by step into urban areas. So it will be a gradual process. But there is no doubt in my mind that autonomy will play an incredibly big role in future mobility.
And we're here today as part of the ARM DevSummit. What message would you like to give to the ARM ecosystem? How can the ARM ecosystem help the automotive industry? How can it help Volkswagen? How can it help some of the goals that you have as part of Artemis?
What we as Volkswagen need we need choices. Yeah? We need to be able to work with different partners, and that we need to be able to change partners over time as the requirements change, or as other conditions change. So we need to have flexibility, and that flexibility means we need to be able to sort of change the mix between hardware and software. And for that we need transparency, and we need also sort of stable specs, all right? So in order to be able to keep, for example, our software stack and change out the hardware underneath. So we need certain standards, let's put it that way.
And are there any new skills or competencies the ARM ecosystem needs to bring specifically to this new world of automotive?
ARM is, your IP provider to this whole industry, right? And the requirements, the compute requirements, they are, let's put it that way, very dynamic, right? As the robotics software algorithms evolve, the requirements on the hardware change. And so we need more and more hardware acceleration, and ARM, needs to provide, needs to help the industry, needs to provide the IP to drive this technology rapidly forward and be flexible and empower basically your customers, which are our suppliers.
And as well as that, we also need the software ecosystem to adapt in the same way as well.
And that's coming to the point I made early on, right? If ARM can help to create this kind of standards and create therefore this kind of flexibility, that would be a great help to the whole automotive industry.
Maybe thinking longer term, do you believe that we'll still actually be driving vehicles at all? Or do you think we'll all be living in a world of autonomy?
I think we will drive when we want to drive, and we don't have to drive when we don't want. And I think that's the sort of the ideal scenario, and I think that's where we're going to move towards over the next decades, let's say, because if we can give the people the time back they are wasting right now when they sit behind the steering wheel in a traffic jam or in stop and go traffic, nobody wants to do that. Nobody enjoys that.
One of the things I always wondered is, in the future, will the automotive industry become similar to the airline industry, where there's 2 or 3 manufacturers, dozens of service companies, and it's the service companies that the consumer has interaction with? Do you think in this full world of autonomy, the same will happen to automotive?
To some extent, I think so. Yeah, And actually, you could even sort of push this a bit further. The airline industry, at the end of the day, there are very few vehicle manufacturers, and then there are these service providers, or the airlines themselves, right? And on the vehicle side, I think it could be that there are very few companies who create platforms. And that means software and electronic architecture platforms, and maybe vehicle mechatronic platforms, and including the powertrain, and some key features like autonomy. That if you see this as a complete platform, and then there are companies who take that platform, buy that platform, make their own design, top hat, and sell the vehicle then as an OEM, but the actual underlying technology actually comes from another OEM, a bigger one, for example.
Okay. And maybe one last cheeky question, Alex. What car do you drive today yourself?
So I have a fun car. I have a 911 GT3 because I used to work for Porsche, obviously. And I take that to the track. So I'm already advanced at that side. I don't have an autonomous car yet, obviously. So I drive a VW as a sort of daily drive, and my fun car is the 911.
Fantastic. Alex, unfortunately our time is up. I want to thank you for taking the time to chat with us today. It's been a fascinating discussion. I wish you and your team the very best with Artemis. It sounds like an incredibly exciting project. And I wanted to thank our audience for joining us today.